We got grit. When I came here, it was all about blue collar, being a blue collar player, and these guys really show up to work each and every day. And so I'm just excited to get these wins, and each of them are meaningful. It's not easy to be 8-2. I think it's the first time in my career that I've ever been 8-2, but it's a testament to these guys and the grit that they got.
So the Denver Broncos survive another bad game of football, but because of their winning streak, it appears to everybody on the surface that it's really impressive. Oh, it doesn't matter how we're winning. A win is a win. Bo Nix is our guy. I remember something very similar like this happening a few years ago with a guy by the name of Tim Tebow. And Tim Tebow was ostracized by 99% of the former athletes that were out there. Even during broadcast games, John Gruden was quoted as saying, "Stop talking about Tim Tebow and the Denver Broncos," and he mentioned their losing record. The only guy who actually thought Tebow was going to be anything was Skip Bayless. But this was Denver football back then. They would play horribly for 3 quarters, then they would win a football game, and then everybody would go, but Tim Tebow can't really play quarterback. And now we have Bo Nix doing the same exact thing, but for some odd reason, he's getting compared to John Elway. And I need those comparisons to stop pronto. They're not warranted. They're not deserved. The functionality of the Denver Broncos is inconsistency at best. We could talk about the fourth quarter, or we can live in reality. The Broncos are fraudulent. Denver didn't win against the Raiders. It was a game that the Raiders refused to take. They had a penalty on 4th down, which killed one of their conversions. They had a big 32-yard play to Genty. A penalty negated that negated that play. Then Genty would later drop a pass, which turned into an interception. They had Denver pinned almost the entire football game, literally in their own backyard the whole time. Bo Nix was heaving footballs, just straight YOLO balls into double coverage. That's not aggressive. It's panic. That's exactly what that is. There's nothing clever about Sean Payton in that offense anymore. It's predictable. It's mundane. And I told people from the beginning that Bo Nix could have really thrived in 3 football teams in the NFL. The Detroit Lions, San Francisco 49ers, which I've been saying for years, anybody could thrive as a quarterback back there with C-Mac healthy. Look how that's going. And the Denver Broncos. Why? Because it was the exact same offense that finally started to work for him when he was at Oregon. When he was at Auburn, what did he ever accomplish? Oh, wait. Before anybody says he didn't have a team around him or why couldn't he play like that in Auburn, that's because it's 100% the system. He is carried by screenplays. Sure, he's athletic, but 99% of quarterbacks playing the game today in the NFL have the capability to, at the bare minimum, scramble out of the pocket and make a play. The idea of a straight-up drop-back passer has been gone for years in the NFL. That mundane style of play essentially was dust in the wind the moment we saw Lamar Jackson do what he did his first year with Baltimore. Even with all the quarterbacks leading up, John Elway, Randall Cunningham, Steve Young, Mike Vick, Donovan McNabb, even with all those quarterbacks and what they demonstrated could possibly be, I still firmly believe that it took Lamar Jackson before the NFL finally really said, look, we're just going to have to throw our hands up. The option game works regardless of what league you run it in. When it's done correctly, it is unstoppable. And Bo Nix is a perfect example of not just the RPO, but the systematic quarterback. See, there are a few guys like Elway, Mahomes, and a host of others, not many, that you could literally throw into any system and they would survive. Probably Tom Brady, as unathletic as he was, the last true great drop back quarterback. I don't know that he could have flourished in Baltimore. But I know this much. Lamar probably would have done good in New England. Lamar probably would have done well in Kansas City. Lamar would do great in a lot of places because he's not a system quarterback. You stick Bo Nix with the Kansas City Chiefs and he's not nearly as successful. 60% completion percentage, 8 interceptions, which is tied for third highest in the NFL. Only Tua and are above him. I mean, come on. And history repeats itself, and Denver was living on the edge for a good majority of their games last season. And I got throttled on the internet about this. Look how close, those games against those winning teams. They're 1-2 this year against winning teams. Let's be clear about that. The teams that they beat have a combined win percentage of 36. Let's be clear about that. And these games that they're winning while they're living life on the edge will probably catch up to them in the playoffs the same way it did a season ago against Buffalo when they got drummed, annihilated, hoodwinked, stopped, ran through, dominated. And any other adjective you would like to use to describe how Denver played in that football game. Sure, they came right out of the gate, got a big play. After that, it was right back to who Bo Nix really is. And that team, I always say, teams are reflective of their coaches. Denver is a perfect reflection of Sean Payton. Inconsistent and an arrogant, just full-on demeanor without having that resume. Let's keep it a buck. Drew Brees really saved Sean Payton's career. He did that movie, and that's all fine and dandy, and he got to make a little cameo at the end of it as a janitor and go, man, we're glad to have you back, coach. This team really sucked without you. Okay. You don't know how to coach anybody who can't do it exactly the way that you want. And that's all there is to it. And even when Russ went back to retool himself, you were still barking at him on the sidelines in a way I never saw you do Drew Brees. And before anybody says, well, he did it to Bo and Bo just clapped back, we all know what would have happened if Russ would have clapped back. And let's not pretend that we don't. I think Jayden Daniels is a quarterback that you could probably plug and play anywhere. And speaking of Jayden Daniels, look, did anybody actually watch the play of what happened to the left side over here? I encourage you to go and look at that and then say the words out loud again. Guys, it's fine. It's not his throwing shoulder. It's not his throwing arm. Everything is okay, Brody. So what's going to happen when he tries to stiff arm a defender with a limp noodle? Has anybody thought about that? I guess he should just torment all of his left arm and shoulder and elbow and forearm and everything else just because, it's not my throwing arm. It's fine, Brody. I'm good, bro. It doesn't matter if this thing just hangs off and Buddy's going to be out there throwing passes like this. Just hanging out. This thing is, I'm not Jim Carrey. I can't make it look like I'm dislocated or something, but you ever seen that? The thing he did with the behind the back and a little stand-up thing he did in the 80s. Then he's like, won't be any more physical comedy in this one. Boop. It's the deck. Look, man, I'm just saying that I think it's a little ridiculous to be like, it's going to be okay. It's not his throwing arm. The biggest problem that any sport has is bringing back an athlete entirely too quickly, long before they are ever really ready. And in a physical game like football, to suggest that just because it's not his throwing arm, that means Jayden Daniels should be able to play. Look, man, stop. Washington should absolutely put him on the IR. They're not going to do anything this season. He's been playing hurt pretty much from the beginning as it is. They just need to hit the reset button and wait till next year. We're already into the middle part of November. Chances of making the playoffs are going to be fairly slim. We know the Eagles are taking the NFC East. After that, the Giants aren't a threat to anybody. I'm not saying you wouldn't have a chance to make the playoffs, but it would be pretty slim. And I think it's not worth it to risk your career. It's not worth it to risk your livelihood later on after your career is over. And I think it's a better situation for everybody involved to just let him rest, get healed up the way he needs to, basically use the winter as an offseason, and then get back to work come February, March. Let him get ready and be ready for spring camp. Just have him do a lot of stretching in between then. That TB12 method seems to work really good. Brady lasted until he was into almost his mid-40s. I mean, seriously, I'm calling anybody I can. If that means TB12, I'm calling TB12, man. And even then, you ain't got to call TB12. All you got to do is just buy the little book or demo or whatever it is that he put out. You're good to go. I don't know. I can't keep up with doing rich people stuff. I make a smoothie and think about how much money I'm spending every time I put a few strawberries and some cherries and a banana and some other stuff inside of a blender that I bought for $25. So there's that. I just find it really bizarre that it's cool, man. It's not a throwing arm. What's everybody's problem? Wow. Everybody, I am Drew Duncan. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. I am wherever you are listening to broadcast. Simply tell your device to play the Drew Duncan Sports Show, The Smoke by Drew Duncan. Everybody stay safe, take care of yourselves, and have a wonderful rest of your night and or day.